Yes, people, good evening. Hope you're all well. Welcome back to Lead Judges TV. Lead Judges, as you know, is away on holiday. So it is myself, your host, Dan Potts. And I've brought on two people, but only one that you'll see because one of them is very late, but he is coming on, I assure you. He's downloaded it, Chrome as we speak because he's opening his brand new laptop. And that, of course, is Harry Simew. But the one that you can see on my screen, trying to keep cool like I am, is Mr. Tom Canton from the Gooner Talk. How the devil are you, Tom? Oh, you're on mute, mate, but it sounds like you're good.
As always, yeah, no, very hot, very hot. It's ridiculously warm, and it's only going to get warmer from the looks of things. So, yeah, crazy.
Yeah, man, 100%. Talking of keeping warm, we do have Harry Simew with us, who's literally just about to join us. So let's invite him onto the stream. How you doing, Harry?
Yeah, all good, guys. Sorry, tech issues. I'm about to switch over to a better device. So feel free to start the conversation, man, and I'll jump in just a sec.
Of course. Absolutely, no worries at all, bro. Listen, Tom, there's loads to talk about, man, but we haven't got much time to talk about it. So I'm going to go straight in with a couple of news updates. The first one being Jack Wilshere, mate, retiring from football, under 18s manager of Arsenal. I want to get your thoughts on Jack Wilshere, the player, now that he's retired at what I think is a very young age at footballer, but one that I think is probably not a massive shock to some in terms of his injuries. So Jack Wilshere, the player, and Jack Wilshere, the coach. What's your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, I have been back and forth about the idea of him becoming Arsenal's under-18s coach. It's a strange one, isn't it? Because, I mean, Arsenal gave Mikel Arteta the head coach role in the first team. No prior experience of having a job in that field. And now we're giving the under-18s head coach role to Jack Wilshere, who's got no experience of being a coach anywhere else. So it is, there is some, I don't know, it's not, contradiction. It's not hypocrisy. It's risky is what it is. But as a player, I loved him as a kid. I think he was great. I think he was, one of the most exciting players to come out of the academy. And it was injuries, of course, that just completely wrecked his career. I'll never forget that game at home against Barcelona. That was just pinnacle Wilshere at the age of 19. So yeah, it's a real shame how it ended in the end, but hopefully he gets a new lease of life in the form of coaching. I hope it goes well, but I do think that there are risks with this appointment, just like there were risks with the Arteta appointment.
Yeah, there are risks to it, but I've always been okay with coaches coming back in terms of coaching. I just find it very embarrassing when we have to do the inevitable, which is, of course, let them go, and then it becomes rather embarrassing, doesn't it? Because obviously you look at Frank Lampard, you look at Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and potentially Mikel Arteta if things don't go well in the next couple of years for him, and that will be horrendous. But I'm not really against people using their expertise in terms of being in and around the club at that level of coaching. So somebody like Patrick Vieira I was wanting to see back at the club. Obviously he's now gone into management. Dennis Bergkamp I would have always liked to have come back. Jack Wilshere coming back for me is only going to be a good thing for the youngsters because he's been there. I just don't know that, like you say, Tom, that he's got the experience of it. But I just thought it was worth mentioning. Of course, he is the under-18s coach now. Harry, can you hear us, mate? Have you got any tech issues? Are you all good? Hey, that's a good start, man. You must like this heat, mate. You must be more used to it than me and Tom. We're melting, mate.
I love it, mate. I love it. I sleep like an absolute baby in it. It's beautiful, honestly. I don't get why people complain about it. I think it's fantastic.
Hey,
what's better than walking around with in a vest or just topless and just enjoying the sun soaking out and getting that?
Clearly not seeing me topless.
Well, listen, I live in Essex, mate. You don't want to see Essex lads walking around.
Mate, I'm not a pretty sight topless either. But in the comfort of your own garden, it's all good.
Harry, we just mentioned Jack Wilshere, obviously him coming back, but I want to move on if I may because we haven't got much time. Just in relation to the news or rumours that William Saliba and Bukayo Saka are looking at new contracts, or the club, should I say, are looking at new contracts. I want to ask you for more expertise if you've heard any rumours about that being true, and what does this mean for Arsenal? Because for me, this must be a huge positive, mate, for both of them staying at the club long term.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know anything for sure. I'm not going to pretend to be ITK, but I've seen the rumours that everybody else has seen. Earlier on in the month, actually, maybe even at the back end of last month, I said on a show, on 90 Min's Talking Transfers show, that we had heard reports that Bukayo Saka's people were kind of quite optimistic about the the business that Arsenal were looking to do, and that got mistaken as Harry Symeou says that Saka is about to sign a new contract, which wasn't true at all.
Sounds about right, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So just to clear that up. But look, I mean, the Saliba one is the most interesting one for me, because obviously we want to keep Bukayo Saka, and I think that is one of those where we're at the point now where we just have to prove to him that we're moving in the right direction. It's just that's it. You know, I don't think money will be an issue. I don't think any of the other things will be a problem. I just think it's about matching his ambition. As for Saliba, though, I think that if Saliba signs a new contract, it's a massive kind of two fingers up at everybody that's been so anti-Arteta, anti-Edu in the way that they've handled the Saliba thing. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was disappointed when they left him out of the squad, when they didn't register him with a view to moving him out on loan and then failed to do that. I thought that was embarrassing. It was really, really poor from the club. But I think the loan spell last season in particular was so perfect for William Saliba, because he took his game to a new level. He did it at a club where there are similar challenges to the ones you'll face at Arsenal. Now, I'm not saying that Ligue 1 is the same standard as the Premier League, but you're at a big club that probably aren't really achieving what they should be achieving. And you've got to carry that weight on your shoulders week in, week out, of being expected to go out there and deliver and being under the microscope all the time. And that prepares you very well, I think, for life at Arsenal. Now, if he wasn't ready last season, he wouldn't have got much game time at Arsenal. And if he wasn't going to get much game time at Arsenal, his development wouldn't have come along so much in that period. So actually, I said at the start of the summer that Arsenal were in a win-win situation here. We either brought William Saliba back, a much more complete centre-half, and someone who was ready to come into the squad and help out, or if Arsenal still decided that, you know, they didn't think he was up to it, then you can sell him and you can probably recoup the money that you spent on him, which we couldn't have done the summer before. So I think that Arsenal handled that really, really well. And I'm excited to see what he can do at Arsenal. I really, really am.
I'm excited to see Saliba, Tom, because I feel like it's a position that we go into knowing that we're actually quite strong at centre-back now for the first time in a long time. And I never thought I'd be saying that as an Arsenal fan of the last decade, to be honest, because we've been shocking at the back for a long time, in my opinion. I mean, some people might think that's harsh, but I think we have. I think the stats prove it, and I think some of the players we've had prove it. But this guy, I think, is coming in with a lot of hype. He's had 3 seasons in France where he's probably been one of the better defenders in the league, let alone in the teams that he's played for. At Saint-Etienne, obviously, we bought him. He was very highly rated, went to Nice, was one of their players of the season, and then of course at Marseille did absolute wonders. But if he does come to Arsenal and he does sign a contract on with Harry, I think it's worked out to be fantastic business. But where do you see his role in the team next season if he is going to be a part of it, mate?
Yeah, I think that obviously he will join as a third choice. I think that him and Holding will be seen as the two options when White and Gabriel aren't starting in the Premier League side. But when it comes to the cup games and Europa League group stages, Saliba will feature from the start in all of them. I have absolutely no doubt about that. With the 5 substitutions as well, I'd be expecting to start seeing him come off the bench early on in the campaign. And of course, if one of Gabriel or White is injured from the start, then he comes in. But, let's not get it twisted. No matter who you are, you need to earn your place in the group. And he had a fantastic loan spell playing for Marseille in France, but coming into Arsenal, I've no doubt that he can best Ben White into that right centre-back role, but he's got to best him first. It's not just a straight, he walks into the Arsenal team, because White had a really good season last year. White and Gabriel combined to keep more clean sheets than we've kept in the past 4 seasons at the club. So clearly we're moving in the right direction to keeping those clean sheets. It's just about, like, when we concede, how do we stop the conceding from continuing in those specific games? The confidence is high when we've got clean sheets, but whenever we conceded, you would see a second and a third, and in some cases, unfortunately, against the big sides, a 4th plus also go in. And that's why the goal conceded tally was still so high. But hopefully Saliba coming in is going to help to address that. Playing out from the back, there are few centre-backs in Europe that are as good as playing out from the back as Saliba is. His progression, his passing is excellent. He was caught out a few times in Liga, made mistakes. Not many 20-year-old centre-backs are perfect. And he's still got a long way to improve and, refine his game defensively. But it's such a good foundation for him to build upon, and I'm buzzing to see Saliba back in the team next year.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's all about. And my thoughts are that he'll compete with a position for Ben White. I do believe that. I think Gabriel is a really good centre half. I've looked at Ben White this season and saw some great games. But I've also have seen some poor games. We're gonna, as you say, Tom, rightly so, see that with young players. But I do think that we might actually look a little bit further back into Arteta's start of his career. And what I mean by that is when we started to play five at the back on some occasions against the teams like Chelsea and Man City, I think we now have that option of William Saliba coming in alongside Ben White and Gabriel. And then you've still got Tomiyasu and Tierney there that can go and play on that fullback or wing-back situation. So I think you've got an option there at least now. And I think that is why it's going to be so vital for Saliba to come into the mix. Harry, I want to just touch on Saka quickly because I know you mentioned how important it was to keep him. And I obviously think everybody on here agrees and everybody in the chat agrees. What I will say, Eddie and Nketiah are going on 100k a week. Bukayo Saka's on 30k a week. What do you think is going to keep Bukayo Saka and his agent, more importantly, is the question, happy for him to sign on dotted line, mate?
What do you mean in terms of finance, in terms of money?
Yeah, I think how much, yeah.
It's really hard to say, isn't it? It's really, really hard to say. I mean, Eddie Nketiah was somebody who Arsenal had to convince to stay because of obviously there was obviously a feeling in his camp and from him that, you know, he might not get the game time he wants. And I don't actually think it was about money for Eddie Nketiah, but his representatives and him were probably like, well, while we're here, if you want to keep me, then you've got to go that extra mile. And fair play. And from Arsenal's point of view, I don't really agree with giving him that sort of money, if I'm honest. I think it's too much. But what I would say is it's still probably cheaper doing it that way and protecting him as an asset as opposed to letting him go on a free than it would have been to go and bring in a second striker. And I think it's very clear that Arsenal aren't doing that this summer. As for Bukayo Saka, I mean, you've got to look at what the going rate is, really, haven't you? And you'd imagine that it's going to be substantially more, given his importance to the team, than Eddie Nketiah is currently on. So you're probably looking upwards of 150k a week. And I think they at the club, the timing of it, but they also need to offer him something that he will feel is closer to the market value for a player of his importance.
Just quickly, whilst we were talking there is a report coming out from a very well-trusted source in France that he hasn't yet renewed his deal. And according to it's a communication from France that there is no intention for him either to renew as of yet. So I would just say, you know, chill on the whole Saliba contract renewal. It's not done yet.
Yeah, listen, neither of them are done yet. It's just rumours. Fairly heavy rumours, it seemed, the other day. And there was some flirtation going on in terms of social media saying, oh, look, Saliba's about to sign a new contract. Never happened. Obviously, Saka, we know what happens with his agent. He's going to try and get as much as he can. And I'm with Harry. I think we need to go upwards of 150, if I'm honest, now that we've put Eddie on a £100,000 contract. I think Ben White's on about 140. So we need to be looking ahead of that. If
I'm honest, if I was Saliba, I don't think I would sign the contract from a personal point of view.
No.
Like I would want to see how it goes. I would want to see what my role is going to be. I'd want to see if I am really a part of the plan or if it's just a ploy from the club to tie me down so that they can, in 12 months' time, sell me. So, you know, I would have reservations if I were him as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it is fair because if you're looking at the first 11 at the moment, you're William Saliba and you're Bukayo Saka. I think Bukayo Saka knows what his future is. I'm not so sure that William Saliba's is so clear at the moment, but I do think there's talent there, and I'd hate to lose either of them. And I mean Saliba as well as that, genuinely, because I really want to see this guy. It's like 3 years now, isn't it? And we've still not seen him kick a ball at Arsenal shirt. It's crazy. I can't think of another signing, if I'm honest, that Arsenal have had, other than ones that have just gone on to do absolutely nothing, that have been this hyped up or bought for this much money, that have never got the chance as of yet. So this will be really interesting. Guys, I want to just touch, before we go on to transfers, because that's obviously mainly what we want to talk about, the new captaincy is being rumoured at the moment, and I wanted to get both your thoughts on it. Now, everybody knows where I stand. My choice would be Kieran Tierney. Having said that, I understand that the availability issues could be a problem for him, and that a lot of the time people are saying now that it's just not going to happen for him. Now, it'll be interesting for me to see Kieran Tierney's future as a injury-prone player and whether things change for him as he gets older. It's been a horrendous start for him in the last couple of seasons, and I believe at Celtic he went under the knife a few times as well. Tom, I'll start with you on this one. Where's your head at with the captaincy, and do you think that Kieran Tierney would be a good candidate, or would you go for somebody else?
Yeah, look, if Kieran Tierney was fit week in, week out and starting for us every game, I think he would be the obvious candidate. But because he isn't, I think that Martin Odegaard is the obvious choice beyond him. I think that Martin Odegaard has led the Norwegian national side brilliantly since, taking over the captaincy there. I think he's got that leadership kind of passion inside him. You see it in games, how vocal he is, how demanding of his teammates he is, how much pressure he puts on the opposition. He just doesn't stop running. He needs to improve his consistency on how much he applies himself in games for sure. But he's the obvious candidate. But that in itself is a problem for me. Whilst I like Odegaard a lot, and I praise him a lot, and to me is the obvious candidate for captain, I think that in a way probably shows you that we do lack an outstanding candidate. Like you would say, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, that person is the Arsenal club captain. I do think a lot is put on, the club captaincy and the armband more so than it should be in 2022 compared to, say, 20, 30 years ago. But I think the fact that Odegaard is the obvious candidate beyond Tierney were he fit enough is a slight frustration for me. And I wish we had kind of, a real genuine grab the team by the balls kind of leader. But I mean, me and Harry were chatting the other day on our show, and I think we both agreed, Harry, that those figures like Vieira and Adams, etc., they don't really exist, not just at Arsenal, but really in football anymore. So I suppose that's part of the argument as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because if you compare the title-winning captains now with the title-winning captains of the years, you've seen Patrick Vieira's and Tony Adams and John Terry's turn into Jordan Henderson's and Cesar Azpilicueta's and players like that. Let's be honest, they're great players, but in terms of their mentality and their leadership and their fight and their passion, I don't see them in the same category. They're just not as a Roy Keane or Patrick Vieira. Harry, what's your thoughts on this? Because I see two different captains there. I see a Kieran Tierney who's perhaps more of the older school mentality that we're talking about, and Martin Odegaard who more leads by example on the pitch and tries to G the team up in a bit of a different way as opposed to barking orders. So what's your thoughts on that, mate?
I'm leaning towards Odegaard. Tierney would be on par with him for me if he was fit. If he could stay fit, I just can't get my head around, or I can't get behind the idea of a captain that's forever absent. I think that's a massive, massive problem. So I would lean towards Odegaard on that basis. But again, I agree with what Tom said. It's not just about going out there, beating your chest, kind of barking orders at people. Sometimes it's about leading, for example. And in Mikel Arteta's case, where I think he's very specific in the way he wants the team to play the game, he's a lot more tactical than people give him credit for. It might not always work, but there is always a plan. There is always there is always a kind of maybe an over-analysis at times in game that maybe costs us at times, But what it's clear is that he wants someone who he feels has got that level of football intelligence, who can take those instructions on board and then go out there and almost be his voice on the pitch and ensure that those instructions are passed on. So I think that it comes down to, for Arteta, rather than being that vocal guy and the one that goes around and kind of gets people going, it's more about the football intelligence. And I think that's what he sees in Martin Odegaard. And he obviously rates him because when everybody else was clamoring for the likes of James Maddison and various other targets, Emi Buendia, another big one, Mikel Arteta was waiting and waiting and waiting right until the end of the window because he wanted Martin Odegaard.
Yeah, he did want Odegaard. A lot of people in the chat saying he's not really an exciting captain, not one of their choices, not one that they are excited by. I have to admit, I wanted James Maddison, and I do think he had a great season for Leicester, I have to say. I think Odegaard's a good player. I question his goal ratio. I think he needs more assists and goals, if I'm honest with you. But I do like the fact that he's really instrumental at times in midfield. I like the fact that he can look very nice on the ball. I thought he was exceptional against Everton on the last game of the season and scored a brilliant goal. And I'd like to see more of that from Martin Odegaard, if I'm honest. And we started to see it around November, December time. It just kind of fizzled out for me. So I think we see it in parts and we see, wow, this player's unreal. I just get a few Mesut Ozil vibes, guys. I can't lie. Some of his play away from home, I think, come on, man. Please just don't do it.
For a new club today, Mesut Ozil, isn't he?
Oh, don't, man. This guy's unreal, isn't he? Like, Jesus Christ. Honestly, I can't stand him. Like, I can't stand Mesut Ozil, man. I just don't want... listen, I can tell you this now. He is not going to be Mesut Ozil because I can tell straight away the mentality is completely different with Martin Odegaard. He is just not a Mesut Ozil. What I meant by it is the fact that sometimes sometimes he goes missing in some of the games. Now, there's been games where there have been quite big games, actually, where Martin Odegaard has turned up. I think the North London derby last season, he was really good and instrumental in it. I think also Old Trafford, I know he gave away a penalty, but I thought he was really good going forward. So there are games where he has done it. I just question whether he is going to be that guy taking us forward. Guys, I do want to move on. I don't know if you've got anything left to say on that. Go on quickly, Harry.
Just Jesus being there next season, I think, is going to be key for Odegaard. Those
Great
two
point.
linking up.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Just a quick one though on players like Odegaard and Ozil when he was kind of at his pomp. The problem that you get though is sometimes that it doesn't matter how good that player is, your opponents will specifically aim to stifle that particular player, and it becomes very difficult for that player to flourish. And the problem that we had when we had Ozil was we didn't, apart from Alexis Sanchez, have enough around him to make sure that we could still fire when that player himself was isolated. So as long as we keep developing and the likes of Saka and Jesus, etc., can all chip in as well, then Odegaard from time to time will be marked out of games because people know what an influence he can be.
Yeah, no, and I think Tom's point on Jesus and Odegaard, that link up we could see quite well. And I don't want to compare it to anything because this might be a silly comparison. But a lot of the rumours with Alexander Isak was because Martin Odegaard had him behind him. That was his best season. I don't think he scored anything, even half the goals that he did since Odegaard's left. So I think that's a really good point from Tom, and it'll be interesting to see. Tom, I want to throw this one at you. Chaitanya has got a super chat for us. Big up yourself again, Chaitanya, absolute legend, super chat. It says, lads, I'm worried. I watched the Nuremberg game. Our second unit is shocking. We need better transfers ASAP. Only a month left to the start of the season. Tom, I do want to touch on this because I, as you know, am a little bit more worried than some of the people. And I do feel like we need to start to get moving because I'm just going to be really annoyed, mate, if we start the season underprepared again like we did against Brentford. So I want to ask you both kind of in brief updates from yourselves about how confident you are that that won't be the case and that we will get the right amount of players through the door in time for the start of the season, mate. So, Tom, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, at the start of the season, I said I think we needed 6 or 7 players, in my view, to strengthen the squad. And by strengthen, you've got to look at, as that super chat there was talking about, not just the first team, but adding that depth of quality, because we've got 4 competitions we're playing in next season. We need to make sure that we can not only compete across all of them, but be fit enough for every single Premier League game with our other responsibilities that we're also involved in. I think that what we've done so far is great. This is the earliest we've spent this amount of money in a transfer window, and the amount of players we brought in this early is good. It means that the time that we have left, if we couldn't get the priority signings, which look to be Martinez and Rafinha, it meant that we've given ourselves that time to go for potential alternatives. If that is Tielemans and Paqueta and Grimaldo or anyone else that we aren't aware of, because, the transfer window for Arsenal this summer is a bit of like a tip of the iceberg sort of thing. There's a lot going underneath the water that we just don't know about because Arsenal are keeping so much tight-lipped. I'm going to reserve my judgment until the season starts. But like you, Dan, if we've not done our business by that game against Crystal Palace and we've not, say, brought in some really important positions, central midfield is the key one for me. If we haven't strengthened the central part of the midfield before the start of the season, then that looks really bad on Edu and the club, especially considering, before this season ended, Edu had come out publicly and said, we've got this plan and, the owners have signed off on it. To then not deliver such a key priority position, is going to be worthy of serious criticism. There's still plenty of time. And I am still confident with the amount of time we've got left that we can address that. But I wouldn't say to you, I think that we will get in the 2-3 signings before the start of the season. I wouldn't say, I'm probably about a 6-7 out of 10 that we would be able to do that. I think we'll get one more by the start of the season, but I think then one more may come after the season starts.
Yeah, see, that disappoints me, and it would disappoint me if that happens, because I really wanted to get our business done early, Harry, because we saw what happened in January, frustrations without getting anyone. I don't want to go back into that, but I do feel that we have to look back at that and say, we've actually had a poor January window. Let's move into the summer and let's see what we can do. And if we don't start the season with the players that I believe we need in the squad, then it could be, we've seen this before type attitude. So what's your general thoughts of some of the players we're linked with and how many you think we could get in time for Crystal Palace, mate?
I think we're going to get 2 more in total. I've said that for a few weeks now.
What, in time for Palace or just in general?
I don't know that they'll both be in time for Palace. I'd like to think that at least one of them will be. And like Tom, I think the centre of midfield now is the next most important position. For me, going into the window, it was striker, centre forward. That was the number one priority. We addressed that. Now we need to bring in a midfielder. If we need to wait towards the end of the window to bring in a backup left back, which we think is something that Arsenal are looking at, then fine. I'm okay with that. I do think, though, as well, like it's really hard, isn't it? Because sometimes we get frustrated. I think a lot of people's expectations going into the window were just completely unrealistic. This is a club that brought in correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, 7 players last summer, 6 or 7 players.
Yeah,
to think that we were going to go out this summer and bring in more than that again was, I think, completely misguided. Like, I know people.
Why do you think that?
Because I don't think that the club were ever going to do that. I don't think it was a realistic. Clubs don't do it. Clubs don't go out and sign 7 big players every single summer. It just doesn't happen. Financially, it can't happen because of the way that the club operates. Anybody that's looked at Arsenal's financial results over the last 2-3 seasons, and I know a lot of clubs have suffered because of COVID and all of that, but when you look at that, when you think about the way Arsenal have operated, and you think about even now, like, we've spent money over the last couple of seasons. We've never gone over the £50 million mark. You know, there's still a limit for Arsenal on each player that they buy. So, yeah, I just think it was unrealistic to expect like 8 players this summer. You know, I think that the other thing that people seem to forget is that a lot of the young players that we have at the club are expected to push on and be at a higher level next season, which again reduces the need to make drastic change. If you're going to back this project, a lot of people don't like it. You got to give it time to breathe, right? You don't sign Gabriel and Ben White with a view to them being your centre backs for the next few years, only the next summer to go out and spend 70 million on another centre back to come in and step in front of them. Because then why did you bring them in the first place? I think there is a willingness at Arsenal, not among the fans, clearly, you can see that from the comments, but there is a willingness at Arsenal to give this team a chance to breathe and to grow. And that has always been the plan since we've heard about this project, since we've heard about what Arsenal and Edu and Arteta want to do. It's been abundantly clear that that was what was going to happen. So I don't understand why people have gone into this summer thinking Arsenal are going to go and get 8 players in and completely change the team again. It wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't. It wasn't. You know, you can say it's what we need, and that's an opinion. You could say it's what we want, and again, that's an opinion. But it was never really on the cards. So if you set your expectation to something ridiculous or something unlikely, then you are going to be disappointed because it wasn't in line with reality.
Tom, I obviously disagree with Harry, and you know I do, because I've been calling out for us to go and spend some money, because obviously we've been letting players go in January, in my opinion, to try and clear out and then allow us to have a good summer. Now, if that's not going to be the case, then I kind of look backwards and think, what was the hell was the point of clearing players out? So I want to get all your thoughts on what Harry's saying. I do agree with what Harry's saying. There's a difference between what we need and what will happen. I totally agree with that, and I've been saying that for a long time. I think we all know what we need. Whether it's going to happen or not, I've always had my doubts, and I do still have my doubts this transfer window. Where I agree with Harry is when he's saying he wants the team to grow, because you're going to have to. If this process or project, what the hell people want to call it, is going to work, you're going to need to allow them to breathe, because you've got the likes of Bukayo Saka, Martinelli, all these young players coming through. Where I disagree is where we actually do need some strength in depth is not in the is not replacing those youngsters, because what I feel we need is somebody to back up the likes of Kieran Tierney. They won't come in and replace him or back him up. Somebody to back up Tomiyasu when he gets injured that's better than Cedric, which can't be hard out there, in my opinion. Somebody who might be better, that if we get 2 of our centre-backs injured, Rob Holding has to come back in. Somebody who's better than Lokonga, who's coming in for Partey. None of these positions that I feel we need, apart from Yuri Tielemans and now our Gabriel Jesus, are probably going to be in our first 11 anyway. So I do feel that when we do come in, I don't think we're going to, what I'm trying to say is I don't think we're going to stump the development of some of our young teams by getting in some of these players. And I don't think there's anything wrong with healthy competition. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that, mate.
Yeah, no, look, I think when you look at the state of the squads, the players that we were going to bring in to say genuinely start, it was going to be at striker, it was going to be at central midfield, and potentially a defender. But when you look at the squad with Saliba coming back as well, who is a big returner, that's a huge, as we've mentioned, a big return for us. We hate the whole like a new signing, but it's a player that's 30 million quid that we didn't have before this season coming into the first team that we do have. So if you're ever going to use that ironic saying, it does fit this season. And I think that the starting positions we have addressed is Jesus at striker. You would hope before the season starts we can get in a midfielder. If that's Tielemans, great. And, talking off air, we both agreed that Tielemans would be a great addition, to the midfield and would strengthen the options that we have there, absolutely. But the defence, our back five of Ramsdale, Tomiyasu, White, Gabriel, Saliba now as a potential competitor for that, and Tierney, it's a really good back line that I think we can build upon. I would have loved Martinez, but not for the price that Man United are now paying. It's a joke, frankly, what Ajax are asking for. But the Grimaldo option is, I've got my reservations about that. I go back and forth with it. Yes, he plays European football, but is he, and I was chatting about with Clive earlier, is he really going to change our left-back situation, really?
Is this
Probably
another
not.
Tavares to you, Tom?
I mean, he's better than Tavares because obviously you kept Tavares at the Benfica side. And, I was looking at his stats earlier on and he actually ousts Kieran Tierney in 16 different areas last season. But that could be contextually because he's playing for Benfica at left back in the Portuguese league compared to Tierney in the Premier League. You've got to take into account the context that the stats go with. But I don't think he's as bad as what people say, but I don't really want a player where I'm sitting here and saying he's not as bad as what people say. I want a player that's coming and going, he's great. Martinez is great. Let's go get someone like that. And I just think that the words that rang in my ears from Clive were, if you buy cheap, you cost yourself twice because you're buying someone that isn't necessarily good enough.
Russ said that to me yesterday. Russ Hogg said that. He said, buy cheap, buy twice. That is true. That is a true statement.
Because you got to buy it again. You're paying for the player to come in that aren't necessarily going to progress you, and then when they turn out and realize they're not good enough, you got to go out and buy someone else again. So I just hope that if Arsenal go out and genuinely add this summer, adding a central midfielder in Tielemans, we've added that Jesus. If we've strengthened the team, and that question that super chat from earlier saying that I'm worried about the B team, that is my worry too. I'm worried about the rotation. I'm worried about the depth. But when you look at our starting 11, the best possible starting 11, which I think is a falsehood anyway, best 11s are going out the window these days. Like you try to do a best 11 for City, you struggle because, their squad's so good. We need to get to that situation where best 11s aren't a thing, where we're debating and discussing about who starts over who. But actually our starting 11's pretty darn good, I think. And if you add in a central midfielder, if you add in the likes of an attacking midfielder that could potentially be like a Paqueta, all of a sudden you've got a very good looking team with extra depth with the players that we've also brought in. Fabio Vieira, I think people are already sleeping on. I'm excited to see what he brings. But yeah, I'm confident about what the team may look like come the end of the transfer window. Maybe not necessarily as confident about when the season starts, which is a real shame, and certainly want to be critical.
This thing about, the end of the transfer window, that's important. Like, I get that everybody wants to start the season well. And even if we start the season with the players that we have available to us right now, and we're poor, that I won't be looking at the transfer window for that. We've got enough players, we've got enough of a team, enough of a squad to be able to go into those early fixtures and be competitive. The important thing is that you get the right players. And if you have to wait an extra week, an extra 2 weeks, an extra 3 weeks, like we did last season with Odegaard and a number of others, then you do that, because the transfer market is nowhere near as clear cut as people make it out to be. There are so many parties involved in a deal. The buying club have to meet the selling club's valuation. The player has to want to join. The paperwork needs to be done. The medicals need to happen. The agents and intermediaries have to get this done by this date. If you believe genuinely that is the right player for you moving forward, most managers would sacrifice 2 weeks in order to get the right fit as opposed to rushing. And over the years, Arsenal spent badly and rushed at the end of windows and brought in awful players. So if we have to wait,
Harry, like what happens if we don't? Yeah, I know it's different, but hypothetically, because I said I'm going to reserve judgment till the season starts before I, criticize what we have or haven't done. If we don't improve central midfield, if we don't improve what I thought was, I thought we needed another wide forwards, to be honest. If that's Paqueta as an attacking midfielder, I can live with that. And if we don't add extra, versatile strength to the defence, where are we going to be at with that? Because then I'm worried.
Well, yeah, but it's like it's one of those things that you'll always look at it in hindsight. With hindsight, won't you? If Kieran Tierney stays fit, nobody will talk about a left back. If Partey and Xhaka play every single week, and you look at their record last season together as a pair, how impressive it was, nobody would talk about us not doing that deal. And so we're obviously leaving ourselves open to a risk, and it's a problem if you end up in that situation. But I'm not going to if those players are fit and we're playing well, I don't really see the point in hammering the club. I think you can only do that when.
But we will hammer them if they.
And fine, and that's the benefit we have as onlookers. We can look at things with hindsight, and sometimes you got to make difficult decisions as a football club. We've got to remember as well, we don't always know. People always go, "Oh, it's Edu, it's Arteta." I mean, we don't know what they've been told they can spend. We don't know that they haven't gone to the club and said, we want to do this deal, and they've gone, no, it's too much money. We just don't know. So we're not in a position to put the blame on any one individual. We can be critical of the club as a whole. So
I think Dan's right about the focus needs to be on the ownership.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, trust me, it will be. Trust me, it will be. I've been calling out these owners for a long time, and obviously I've given Arteta and Edu a hard time as well. But ultimately, the guy who can get rid of those two if it goes wrong is the owner. And will that happen? I have my doubts. If I'm honest, I really do. Even if we finish in the top 6 this season, I have my doubts that Kroenke will get rid of him. I really do. Let's just lastly focus on a couple of players we've been linked with. I want to talk about Lucas Paqueta because I don't know much about him, if I'm honest, and I want to get your two expert knowledge on Lucas Paqueta and also Youri Tielemans, a player we do know more about. I think both would be a good signing. Start with you, Tom. Do you think both is an option for Arsenal to get, or do you just see one or the other?
If we sign both, I'll be shocked. I'd be shocked
I would.
if we sign both. Not because Arsenal don't spend, kind of maybe. But I just look at Paqueta as an attacking midfielder, and I know he's got versatility to his game. I know that you could play him as a left 8. I know that he has played there for Brazil, for instance, and there's plenty of clips you can find online of him playing in a left 8. I don't know how good he would be playing, say, in a potential kind of Smith Rowe style role in a wide area. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to say that he'd be great there because he is best as an attacking midfielder. And I think a bit like Rafinha for the price tag is seen as a bit of a luxury option for Arsenal this summer. Tielemans is a necessity for his genuine number 8 kind of role that he is. But yeah, Paqueta, if we signed him, it would be a great player to sign. Just if you ignore the context for a second, Paqueta is one of the most highly sought after players of his age bracket, of his position on the continent right now. He's technically brilliant. He's aggressive. He's arrogant. He's confident. He's so good on the ball. He's a threat on goal. He's creative. He works really bloody hard. For pressures, I think he averages something like 24 pressures per game, which is well ahead of most of Arsenal's midfielders already. And they're even midfielders that Arteta's brought in. That's clearly one of the reasons why Arteta likes him. He's bursting with energy, this guy. And if Arsenal pull off that signing, it would be, in my view, one of the biggest signings that a club could make in the summer, and one of the coups of the summer, that's for sure. But Tielemans, rumours today he's selling his ass. So, the Arsenal private investigators are doing their work. And, the
Arsenal fans are zooming in on his house, looking at his fridge, if that's moving out. I've seen today. It's unbelievable. These people are crazy.
As he reduced his online shopping order so he doesn't leave anything in the fridge when he moves.
It is a madness. It really is. Harry, let's come to you on those two rumours, mate. Youri Tielemans is a player I really wanted, and I'm struggling to understand what's the awkwardness about trying to get this deal, other than perhaps we don't want him, because he's there. He's told people he's leaving, from what we hear. I don't think it's much money. I think 30 to 35 million is what Leicester want. A year left on his contract. Doesn't look to me like it's going to be a player that we're going to look at and go, that might be a huge risk. He's Premier League proven. He's a Belgian international. He's the right sort of age at 25 to have enough experience and to have some years left in the tank. I wanted to get your thoughts on that and any other info of Lucas Paqueta and why you think that might be a good or perhaps a bad signing for Arsenal, mate.
I'm surprised at the Paqueta links more than anything. I am surprised by it. He wasn't somebody that was really on my radar as an option this summer. As for Tielemans, I don't understand what the delay is. Maybe, as you said, I think there was somebody really good from a Belgian perspective on Tom's channel. I forget his name. I beg your pardon.
Sacha Tavolieri. Yeah.
Sacha Tavolieri, that's it. And he said something along the lines of, that Tielemans isn't the priority, and maybe he isn't. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe Arsenal are keeping their options open. They must be confident that if they need to go back to Tielemans, that they can get that done. To be kind of playing sort of, I don't know, they're taking a big risk, aren't they? They're kind of leaving the Tielemans door open, and another club could quite easily swoop in and do that deal. I don't really know of anybody else, but I do know that, things have gone very, very quiet from an Arsenal perspective, and things have gone very quiet from a lot of the reputable sources that we as Arsenal fans go to. Now, that to me doesn't mean that Arsenal aren't working. It just means that we're not quite in the know at the moment. And I actually think that's a good thing. I don't like the transfer speculation. I hate it. I hate the summer. As a content creator, the first few weeks of the window are quite exciting because you get to chat about transfers, and you've ignored that for the past few months. But then it gets to this point, I think, where you're starting to get fed up and you just want to go back to talking about football because so much of it is just hot air. And what we're guilty of as a fan base, not just Arsenal fans, but fans in general, is of over analysing a potential incoming before they've come, before you know that it's anywhere near being done, almost falling in love with them, and then being disappointed when that deal doesn't happen. And I just think that some of the deals that we get disappointed by when they don't come to fruition were never actually really on the card. So I'm just trying to take a step back, take all the reports with a pinch of salt at the moment, and just see what happens.
What I think's happening, I don't know what you boys think. I think we're going for these players, and then the price tags are looking ridiculously high, and then we're just pulling out of them. So, for example, the Rafinha one, obviously, he's gone to Barcelona. Shock. He's gone to Barcelona for a ridiculous amount of money. Lisandro Martinez has gone to Manchester United for a lot of money. We've pulled out of that from what we hear. It looks like he's going to go Manchester United now. This Paqueta one sounds like he's going to be probably a lot of money. Milinkovic-Savic, they were saying, was going to be a ridiculous amount of money. I don't know how much money we've got, but it's a bit frustrating when we link quite heavily, as people call it, and I hate that word, because how heavily can you be linked with someone until they're in wearing your shirt? But when I look at it, I think that perhaps we haven't got this unlimited amount of budget or war chest, whatever the hell you want to call it, that perhaps people were expecting us to have. So maybe Grimaldo is going to happen because he's only £7 million. That kind of worries me a bit. I mean, Marquinhos has come in, Vieira's come in, Jesus has come in. We've got Turner and Saliba, who I'm not counting. I'm sorry, boys. They've been with us. Saliba's like an Emery signing, for goodness sake. And obviously we've got a left-back, Grimaldo, which looks like it probably happened now. So I wanted to ask you, and there's a couple of comments I'm going to bring up lastly, what positions do you see us covering, and where do you think we'll still be left short? Because Harry's making it sound as if we're probably not going to cover them all this summer. So what ones do you think we're gonna cover? I'll come to you first, Tom, and then let Harry have a say.
Yeah, I think the central midfield is going to be the primary area that we strengthen, which is good because that's what we need. And then we might go for more of an attacking player because it's clear that Arteta's kind of looking to try and follow this Manchester City model of having all these attacking talents that you can rotate and choose from and interchange, keep fit and keep the opponents guessing type thing. Will we sign a defender? I feel like that might be one that happens towards the end of the window as opportunities, kind of become available in the last few weeks. That's what usually happens. It's not a bad thing to sign a player at the end of the window, especially if they're good enough. We signed Thomas Partey on deadline day. We signed Tomiyasu on deadline day. These are good players that weren't necessarily gettable. Less so Partey, because of course he had that release clause. But we were looking at other potential options throughout the window that then didn't happen. So we went to Partey as the alternative. But Tomiyasu, turned out to be an absolutely brilliant signing for us. On deadline day. I think we sign. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other deadline day deals that we've done in the past. Mesut Ozil, of course, I know it didn't turn out great, but certainly
Andre Arshavin was signed in February, wasn't he?
Yeah, one of our only February signings ever. But I think the point is, we're talking about these players and the price tags. If you want quality and you want a player that's going to be a genuine starting quality for your team, you've got to pay big. In 2022, you're paying big. And that's why kind of the expectation around 7+ additions that all start, is just beyond the realms of reality. You need to be opportunistic. Barcelona I'm envious of a lot of their business recently because whilst they've got these financial issues, they have completely manipulated the free market brilliantly well. You know, you getting in players on frees that they can either sell on later and start building back their financial kind of booklet. Kessié on a free, Eric Garcia on a free, Depay at the time on a free, Aubameyang on a free. You know, players that have got them back into the Champions League and pushing towards a La Liga title for next season. You know, Christensen is another one. You know, adding players. Real Madrid are doing it with Rudiger, etc. The free market maybe is something that Arsenal haven't utilise as well as maybe we could, but without Champions League football, it's going to be a bit of a struggle to convince them to join Arsenal over the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona and Chelsea and City, etc. So if we can identify 2 to 3 genuine top-class starting quality players this summer, and you add to that players that strengthen the widest quality of the group, then I'm happy with the window. But if the expectation was to add 6 starting quality players as a minimum, just as Harry said earlier, I think that was unrealistic. So, yeah, but to your question, midfield, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, to be fair, in terms of having 6 starters from the first 11, I think is just not going to be realistic. I think the 2 positions that are clear that need upgrading is Granit Xhaka's and Eddie Nketiah's. They're the 2 that need upgrading, in my opinion. And maybe Yuri Tielemans, Lucas Paqueta, and of course Gabriel Jesus can do that. And our first 11 might look okay. We still need a lot in terms of cover, because we saw what happened against Newcastle.
I was never that frustrated by our first 11 last season. I think had our first 11 been available week in, week out, we'd have done fine. We'd have got in the Champions League. And so my point is that, yes, the first 11 can be improved on, but the problem for Arsenal last season, the bigger problem, was the lack of depth. And if we're addressing that, which we are with Saliba coming in, Fabio Vieira brings depth. Jesus will start, but Nketiah signed up. If we can get a bit more depth in there, a left back as well, maybe, then I think that we'll be in better shape than people think. And everybody says, we're getting left behind our competitors. You know, Chelsea last season, at the start of last season, they were European champions, and they went out and bought Romelu Lukaku for £100 million. And I cannot tell you how many people told me that is it now, they're going to push on and win the title. And they were even worse than the season before. There's no guarantee that everybody's summer signings always make them better. There's no guarantees in football whatsoever. And so to get obsessed with what others are doing and say, oh my God, they're leaving us behind, it's just premature overreaction.
Yeah, no, fair play, man. Last 2 questions of the night. I'm going to put one to Tom, one to Harry, then we're going to wrap up because we do need to go. Tom, this touches on what you've just gone on about, but I'm going to put you a little bit more on the spot at the end of this. It says, Keenan, thank you for your question, mate. It says, we have 4 key areas to strengthen in his position: left centre midfield, defensive midfield, left back, a wide forward. If we're only to get 2 transfers in, which 2 positions should be prioritised, do you think? And I'm going to go one further and ask you what players you'd go for.
Okay, I'll keep it short because of time. Left centre midfield, I'll say Tielemans, and left centre mid has to be one of those positions. The other, I would say wide forwards is the other one, because I know that we've got this whole fullback thing, but I just don't see the options out there, to be honest, that we're going to sign to strengthen. And Tavares and Cedric, it's painful, but if you're only allowing me 2, I think we benefit more, to be honest, from the centre mid and another attacker next season. So I will say for the wide player, because it's hard, Pedro Gonçalves at Sporting.
Oh, that's a different one. Good shout. I've not heard that one. I've heard Serge Gnabry. That's all I keep hearing.
Yeah, but that's
Serge
not realistic.
That's all I keep hearing. Man. No, fair play, Tom, and well played, because I put you on the spot. But the reason I did it is because I knew you would deliver as you always do. Harry, this is an interesting one to finish the debate, mate, and finish the show nicely. Frank and Yasi, thank you very much, mate. It says, quick question to Harry. What did it mean when Arteta said, we have a clear plan? Could you please explain? I think it's a fair question.
It means that Arsenal identified what, in their opinion, needs to be done in order to get the team to where it needs to be. Does that guarantee that you are able to execute the plan? I mean, I think back to my single days, Dan, when I used to go out, my plan was to go out on the pool and to be successful. Was I successful every single night? Absolutely bloody not.
Of course you was, mate. You're a Greek god, mate. You know what I mean? Of course you were.
But the point is that terrible example, but the point is that you can plan, but it doesn't mean that you're always going to meet every expectation of that plan, you're always going to be able to tick every box in that plan. Sometimes, you can have a plan and it doesn't work out. I mean, earlier on in the window, Arsenal planned to try and sign Rafinha and made a move and tried to get it done. And then the price went crazy. And then we saw, as things developed, that actually we never stood a chance of signing him in the first place because he only wanted Barcelona. So even if we'd have coughed up the £65 million, which would have been going along with the plan, it still might not have happened. Because what people seem to overlook time and time again when it comes to the transfer window is that there are so many moving parts to every single deal, and it's not always in your hands. You can't always execute every single plan to a T, and it's as simple as that. Doesn't mean there isn't a plan, just we're not always able to carry it all out, and that is in any walk of life.
I think what you're saying makes sense. I get frustrated, as some of the people do in the chat. I don't see a plan. And if I'm honest with you, I think it's a stupid statement, to be honest, because as we know, plans change and plans can quite quickly change, particularly in the transfer window. So I don't know that fans... I think when people say we have a plan, fans expect that plan to come to fruition and there to be no drama and no domino effect to any of that.
Nobody knows what the plan is. So how can you say the plan didn't come off if you don't know what it is?
And that's my next point. Yeah, is there? I don't know. I don't really see a plan. That's what I'm getting at. Really, I don't really see it. I don't really see one.
The point is that if you don't know what the plan is, and Mikel Arteta doesn't hand out worksheets to every Arsenal fan when they go to the Emirates Stadium saying, "In the summer we're going to do X, Y, Z."
It should. That would be nice and transparent, wouldn't it?
It would. But if you do not know what the plan is, how can you say whether it was achieved or not? You can't, because while everyone wants to pretend they know, and wants to jump on reports and jump on this and jump on that and say, oh my God, we tried to do this and it failed. Yeah, sometimes we will fail, but you don't know what the overall plan is. Not a single one of us mentioned Fabio Vieira. Not a single one of us. That was clearly planned. We heard that it was done from months ago.
Just quickly, for me, if we're going to talk about the plan for Arsenal Football Club has to be to get it to where it's challenging for the biggest trophies and titles.
100.
In short, that has to be the plan for Arsenal. And so if the actions that lead us on this pathway don't correspond to that of a team that is trying to do that, that's how we measure success or failure. So when we come to the end of the transfer window, because we can't measure it right now, when we come to the end of the transfer window, if we've done what a club that has that ambition needs to do, and if that's been completed, then we can say yes. And so I think for most of us, that's signing a top-class striker, signing a great midfielder, and strengthening the overall look of the squad. That, in my mind, is leading towards trying to get us back there. And I hope that we do it.
I think we all hope that we do it. I think there's some of us that believe that there's more time needed, and I think you and Harry have liked some of the stuff that you've seen and are willing to give it a bit more time. For me, I've seen enough. I think everybody knows that, and I think this season is going to be a real interesting one for where the fan base are, because it'll be interesting to see those that still believe this is going to work if it doesn't quite get to a Champions League spot, whatever you think is the minimum of what we believe is needed, and those that think that it's just not good enough and enough's enough now. And I think we are probably going to see more of that. I think there's quite a mix still with the fan base, and I do think that some are really interested in what's going to happen next season because they're excited about it. I think some are just a little bit lost as to what's going on now and just think, I don't really want to be scraping for a Champions League space again with no trophies, and I'm certainly in that bracket now. I think we need to be looking at when this is going to go bang, so to speak, that people are excited about. So let's see what happens next season. We've got a long way to go in the transfer window yet, and I still think we've got a lot to do. So it is going to be an interesting one. We are going to leave it there because we've run out of time. I want to thank both of you for coming on. I'm a massive fan of both of you. Absolutely love what you do, love your content, and love both of your channels. Please make sure you go and big up and support these two guys, man. Let's go over to the Gooner Talk TV. Smash a subscribe on the channel. Tom's now at what, 20? What you on now?
35,000.
Oh, sorry, mate. 35. You've flown up. It was 20 last time I looked. No, I'm joking. 35. That's amazing, buddy. And keep doing what you do, man. I appreciate you coming on as always, Tom. Thank you so much, mate.
No, always a pleasure to join you, mate. And what you and Lee have done in a year is mad. And obviously you're doing the same now with your own channel, Dan, as well, which you should give a shout out to. So always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you very much, mate. Much appreciated. Harry, I would say follow Harry, but he's just got Harry written down there. So it is, of course, the Chronicles of a Gooner. But you can follow Harry Simio on Twitter as well. What are you on now, Subwise, mate, before I kill it and underestimate what you've got?
22 and a half, maybe just
22
over,
and a half.
something around there. Yeah.
Fantastic, man. Absolute legend. Love
22 and a half
also.
thousand people that like listening to excuses, I guess.
Yes, mate. Arteta, ADL, I call them, mate. Arteta Defence Lawyers. That's what you two are. Excuses. Excuses.com. No, it's all love, man. And make sure you do. If you enjoy listening to Harry and Tom, please do. If you do want to come and support my new channel, that would be amazing. I'm on the road to 3K for this month, which is all good. I'm happy with that. If you could come and support, that would be amazing. It's at Football's 12th Man podcast, and it will start heating up now. We're getting other influencers on, and we're going to start new shows going into the new season. Races for titles, top four, relegation talk, best of the rest in the middle, because I don't always hear from those, do we? We always hear from the top 6 clubs, and I think sometimes people don't really get a voice. So that's what I'm trying to do now over there. So if you can come and like and subscribe to that as well, it would be amazing. Until then, take it easy. We'll speak to you soon, and as always, up the Arsenal. Take care, guys.